The red-hot iron sizzles against his wrist, and the entire courtyard watches as the prince's skin burns. 200 people wait for a scream. There is no scream. He counts. 1, 2, 3. Because in his past life, he counted the stitches before each incision on the operating table and died there with a scalpel lodged between his ribs. Surgeon So Do-yeon from Seoul woke up 19 years ago in the body of a baby, in a cradle at Songwon Palace, with the memory of an adult and a single secret he had kept silent for 19 years. And now he is branded an outcast. And for what? For 2 veins. Let's rewind an hour. Prince Choi Iwon is kneeling in the middle of the throne room. The priest has just performed the rite of rechecking on him and announced the verdict. 2 silk veins. Just 2. Even the lowliest stable hand in the Eastern barracks has 4. Iwon's older brother, Crown Prince Cho Ho-gyong, descends from their father's throne. 47 veins glow on his neck like a pale spiderweb. The rank of commander. 47 against 2. He takes a hot taeok mandu dumpling from the tray that the Queen Mother ordered to be served to her son on his 19th birthday. The Queen Mother herself did not come. Ho-gyong takes a bite of the dumpling and throws it back. The steam is still rising. He says that his father can no longer pretend he has 3 sons. Now there are 2. And the dignitaries laugh. The very same ones who bowed to the floor before Iwon yesterday. The priest rips the cord from his neck. Hanging from it is his mother's jade pendant, the only thing left of her, the only proof she ever existed. The pendant hits his knee and shatters into 2 shards that roll across the marble toward Ho-gyon's boot. His brother picks up 1 shard, turns it toward the light, and leans close to Iwon's ear. He whispers that in the ice rift, people die within a week. He's giving you 2. Consider it a gift. Guards grab him from both sides. 4 hands tear the silk hanbok from collar to waist. Iwon stands naked from the waist up before the courtyard, and 200 people stare at his gaunt chest on which not a single vein glows. And this is where the strangest part begins. He does indeed have 2 veins, but not like everyone else's. Inside his body, from the top of his head to his heels, runs a single continuous thread. It doesn't branch out. It doesn't show as a pattern on his skin. It runs as a continuous stream. 35 meters of invisible thread hidden in a body that the entire courtyard considers empty. The priests mistook it for emptiness. They were wrong. They throw a gray exile's robe over his back. The coarse fabric digs in like sandpaper. They bring the brand, an iron spiral, red hot. A guard presses it against his wrist, and the pain sears to the bone. His skin sizzles. The smell of burnt flesh wafts through the hall, and a dignitary in the front row covers his nose with his sleeve. Iwon does not scream. He counts to 5 and watches as the exile spiral fuses into his wrist forever. Ho-gyong announces to the court, the former prince is stripped of his title and family crest. Place of exile, the Northern Ice Rift, Zone D, where warriors with 9 veins live an average of 40 days. Iwon, with 2 veins, will last less. The dignitaries nod. Someone smiles. Only Chancellor Yoon Gyung-ho, standing by the column, does not smile. He looks at the shards of jade on the floor, and something resembling relief flashes in his eyes. Iwon catches that look. He remembers it. Guards drag him toward the exit, past a tray of dumplings, past the throne, and past the Chancellor's column. Right at the door, he plants his feet and freezes. He turns his head toward his brother. Ho-gyong is no longer looking his way. Iwon moves his lips silently so that only someone watching his mouth can read the words. He'll sew his brother's mouth shut with his own intestines. Not today. but he will. Hogyan doesn't hear him, but Chancellor Yoon reads his lips, and the relief in his eyes gives way to something else. The doors close with a rumble. The last thing Iwon sees through the crack is a half-eaten dumpling. No steam is rising from it anymore. The cart for the condemned awaits at the north gate, a wooden cage on wheels. Inside, straw and the smell of urine from the previous prisoner. The bolt rattles. The cart begins to move. Through the bars, the tiled roofs of the palace, the lanterns, and the tower of the eastern gate, where, at the age of 10, he had read stolen scrolls on anatomy, drift backward. Iwon sits down on the straw. He presses his burned wrist to his chest. Inside, that very tension. 35 centimeters. The surgeon counted the stitches. Precision. Patience. Control. Hogyan gave him 2 weeks. Iwon accepted. The cart overturned on the 3rd day of the journey. A wheel got stuck in a frozen rut, and the axle snapped with a crack like a broken femur. Iwon knew that sound. The guards cursed. There were 2 of them, both with 4 veins, commoner rank, right on the border of warrior. They opened the cout and dragged Iwon out into the snow. The wind cut into his face. The temperature had dropped below the point at which unprotected skin begins to die within 20 minutes. Iwon knew that number too. They were in the foothills of the northern range. 2 more days' walk to the icy rift. The senior guard looked at the broken axle and spat. He said the exile would have to go the rest of the way on his own. The order was to deliver him to the edge of the rift, not inside. The junior guard took a bag of hardtack and tossed it at Iwon's feet. 3 days' rations. That was the end of their duty. They turned back. They didn't even look back. Iwon stood in the snow in the gray robe of an exile with a sack of hardtack and a brand on his wrist. The wind pushed against his back. North, that way. He walked. The robe offered no warmth. An hour later, his legs went numb. 2 hours later, he lost feeling in his fingers. The surgical part of his brain methodically counted off the stages of frostbite. Stage 1, pallor, tingling. Stage 2, loss of sensation. Stage 3, necrosis. He had about 4 hours before irreversible damage set in. He quickened his pace. The snow crunched under his feet. The mountains around him rose higher and higher. The icy rift did not begin with a wall or a cliff. It began with a smell. A sweetish, heavy smell of decay mixed with ozone. That's what the underworld smells like. That's what the fissures all over Hyeongyong smell like. Cracks in the ground from which creatures crawl. Iwon crossed an invisible boundary and felt the air grow thicker. There was 3 times as much of it here as in the capital. It pressed against his skin like water at depth. His single vein responded. It quivered, like a string plucked by a finger. For the first time in 19 years, it reacted to the outside world. Iwon stopped. He closed his eyes. He listened to his own body. The vein ran from the point between his eyebrows, down his spine, through the solar plexus, through the pelvis, and branched into 2 legs all the way to the soles of his feet. Then it rose back up the inside of his body, through the sternum, through the neck, into the skull. A closed loop. 35 meters. No, he counted again. 30, 15, and 2. The rift was feeding the veins simply by his standing there. 2 centimeters in 10 minutes. Negligible, but it was growth. He opened his eyes and moved on. By evening of his first day in the rift, he found a cave. Not very deep, 7 meters. The walls were covered in frost. The floor was icy, but there was no wind. He sat down at the entrance and took out a piece of hardtack. His teeth were chattering so hard he nearly bit his tongue. He chewed slowly, counting calories. 3 hardtack pieces a day is about 600 kilocalories. Basal metabolism at this temperature and exertion requires at least 3,000. The deficit is critical. He needs food. Meat. He finished the hardtack and crawled deeper into the cave, curled up on a rock. He pulled his knees up to his chest. The brand on his wrist pulsed in the darkness. He closed his eyes and ordered himself to sleep. A surgeon knows how to sleep on command. 4 hours until the next operation. On. Off. He'd slept like that with Doyon for 12 years of residency and fellowship. Iwon fell asleep in 2 minutes. He woke to a sound. A screech. Claws on stone. Something was moving at the cave entrance. He didn't move. He only opened his eyes. A wolf stood at the entrance. No, not a wolf. A creature from the underworld in the form of a wolf. 6 eyes, 3 rows of teeth, armored plates along its spine like a rhinoceros beetle, the size of a calf. Threat index? E. Maybe D. The creature was sniffing around. It sensed heat. Human heat in a cave without protective runes. A free lunch. Iwon didn't move. He looked at the creature through the eyes of a surgeon. 6 eyes mean an expanded field of vision, almost no blind spots. 3 rows of teeth mean a reinforced jaw, but the neck must be short and inflexible. Armored plates along the spine. Chitin, soft joints between the plates. In wolves, the carotid artery runs along the side of the neck beneath the lower jaw. This creature's neck is thicker and shorter, but the artery must be in the same place. It might be shifted 2 centimeters deeper. He slowly raised his right hand. The nerve inside responded. He pulled. A thread emerged from the tip of his index finger. Invisible. Thinner than a hair. Thinner than light. He saw it not with his eyes, but with what was inside. With a surgeon's instinct. The thread stretched 1/2 meter and froze in the air. The creature took a step forward. Iwon waited. Another step. Another. The creature was 2 meters away. Its mouth opened. 3 rows of teeth glinted in the moonlight streaming from the entrance. Iwon jerked his finger sharply to the right. The thread passed through the creature's neck as if through air. It didn't get stuck. It didn't slow down. Iwon wasn't sewing. He was cutting. The carotid artery burst. Blood spurted against the cave wall in a black stream. The creature twitched. Its front paws buckled. 6 eyes rolled back. It fell on its side and thrashed. 12 seconds later, it stopped moving. Iwon sat in the same spot. 1/2 meter of thread, a negligible amount. He pulled the thread back into his finger. He stood up. He walked over to the corpse. Blood was still flowing. Hot. It steamed in the cold. Iwon knelt down next to the creature and began his examination. The chitinous plates on its back turned out to be thicker than he'd thought. 3 millimeters, sturdy, lightweight. The flesh beneath them was soft and well supplied with blood. He ran his finger along the joint between the plates. Muscle tissue, alive, healing. An idea sparked in So Doyon's mind. A chitin plate on a living body. Human skin as the base. Chitin as the implant. 0 biocompatibility under normal conditions. But his conditions weren't normal. He had a thread that stitched any 2 surfaces together so they became a single substance. He carefully cut 3 chitin plates from the back of the dead creature with the thread. He laid them aside. Then he slipped the robe off his left shoulder. His skin had turned blue from the cold. He pressed the first plate against his shoulder. The cold of the chitin seared his skin. Iwon pulled the thread. 1 stitch. The edge of the plate to the edge of the skin. The pain was sharp, real. He knew this pain. Patients described it as a burning from within. Stitch 2, 3, 4. 4 stitches per plate. 30 centimeters of thread. He sewed all 3 plates along his left shoulder. 90 centimeters of thread. That made a total of 1 meter 50 used that night, including the killing. 33 meters 50 remained. The plates took hold instantly. Ivan moved his shoulder. The chitin moved with the skin. It didn't press. It didn't rub. It grew from the body like his own scales. His left shoulder stopped feeling cold. The chitin retained heat better than any fur. Ivan looked at the creature's carcass. There were about 30 kilograms of meat on it. He pulled a fragment of a jade pendant from his bosom, the only thing he'd managed to grab in the throne room when the guards were dragging him toward the doors. One shard out of two. Green with a sharp chip. It would do as a scalpel. He began to cut up the carcass, methodically, like in a dissection lab. Muscles separately, fat separately, bones separately, armor plates separately, internal organs separately. By dawn, he had 5 days' worth of meat and 23 chitin plates. Ivan sat in a cave piled high with meat and chitin. 3 plates embedded in his skin gleamed on his left shoulder. The mark of an outcast burned on his wrist. The first normal meal in 3 days was digesting in his stomach. The vein showed 33 and 7. It had grown 2 millimeters overnight. In the rift, it would have healed faster. He clenched the jade shard in his fist. Hogyan had given him 2 weeks. 4 days had passed. Ivan smirked. For the first time ever. Not out of joy, out of calculation. He looked at the chitin plates laid out against the wall, at the meat suspended by strings from the cave ceiling, at his shoulder, covered in armor that no knight in Songwon possessed. Day 4. Life force 33 and 7. Official threat index, F. In reality, that commander in the throne room with his 47 veins wouldn't have lasted an hour here. On the 6th day, Ivan killed 4 creatures. 2 of them were E-rank wolf beetles. One turned out to be a D-rank ice scorpion. The last one was something nameless. 6 legs, 2 tails, a vertical mouth like a mantis, rank D- by eye. He butchered all 4 carcasses in 6 hours. The method was well rehearsed. First, bleed them out. Then, open the chest cavity, sort it out. Meat, chitin, bones, tendons, venom glands separately and far away from the meat. By the evening of the 6th day, the cave had turned into a warehouse. 2 weeks' worth of meat, 41 chitin plates. The scorpion's bones were stronger than steel. Ivan covered both shoulders with plates, chest, upper back. The chitin fused with his skin within seconds of being sewn in. Each plate required 4 stitches, 30 centimeters of tendon. He kept track in his head. Daily consumption on the 6th day. 4 kills, half a meter each, 2 meters. 18 plates at 30 centimeters each, 5 meters 400. Total 740 for the day. The vein had been 38 meters long in the morning. Overnight, 2 meters had regenerated instead of the usual 30 centimeters. The fault line was feeding the vein, a fact confirmed by 6 measurements. He wrote the numbers on the cave wall with his fingernail. A column of dates and figures. A surgeon keeps a log, always. By evening on the 6th day, the vein measured 33 meters, minus 740 for losses, plus 2 for nighttime regeneration. Total 33 and 6. No, 33 and 8. The vein had grown 2 millimeters just from the day's workload, like a muscle. Overload makes it grow. Ivan sat down against the wall and looked at his hands. Chitin plates covered his forearms up to his elbows. The gray robe of an exile lay in the corner. He was no longer cold. The chitin kept his body temperature at 36 and 6. Perfect. He remembered how Hogyan stood by the throne with 47 veins in his neck and spoke of the stable hand. Ivan looked at his wrist. The exile's spiral. He said it quietly, with his lips alone. I'll sew your mouth shut. Not today. The morning of the 7th day began with an earthquake. The cave floor shook. Ice rained down from the ceiling. Ivan jumped up. The tremor came from the northeast. 1, 2, 3. Then silence. He stepped out of the cave. The sky was gray, snow, wind, everything as usual. But to the northeast, above the mountain range, there was a glow. Pale blue, cold, ghee. A lot of it. As much ghee as a rank A creature or higher emits. Yvonne stood and watched. The glow flickered. Then it went out. Then it flared up again, rhythmically, like a pulse. Something alive, something huge, something dying. Yvonne knew that rhythm. A pulse that weakens and returns. An agonal rhythm. An A-rank creature is dying 5 kilometers to the northeast. He faced a choice. 5 kilometers across open terrain. Territory of D-rank creatures and higher. He had 33 meters of sinew, chitin armor, a jade shard. No weapons, no team. Rank F by all accounts. With Doyon, he would have stood at the operating room door and weighed the risks. Mortality rate, chances of complications. Yvonne went. 5 kilometers took 3 hours. Twice he had to go around the nests of the wolf Zhukov's nests. Once he killed an ice scorpion that crawled out from under the snow right in front of him. Half a meter of flesh. A clean cut through the carotid artery. The creature didn't even twitch. He stepped over the corpse and kept going. By noon, he reached the plateau, and he saw it. A dragon. An ice dragon. White scales with a blue sheen. 40 meters from nose to tail. Wingspan of 1. The left wing was torn off. The stump jutted out of the shoulder joint. Blood flowed from the severed subclavian artery. Hot blood. It was melting the snow around the dragon within a 20-meter radius. Steam rose in a wall. The dragon lay on its side. 6 clawed paws scraped the ground. One eye was closed. The other looked at Yvonne. A golden pupil the size of a human head. There was no fear in that pupil, only cold and calculation. The dragon was assessing. Would it have enough strength to kill this tiny figure if it came closer? Yvonne stopped 10 meters away. He looked at the wound, the subclavian artery, a diameter of about 15 centimeters. In a human, it's 1.5, a 10-to-1 scale. The shoulder joint is shattered. The muscle layer hangs in shreds, but the wing isn't completely lost. There's a stump. There's a joint. If this were a human in the operating room, So Doyon would say the chances of recovery are 12%. But in So Doyon's operating room, there wasn't a single thread that could suture any tissue to any other tissue without rejection. Yvonne sat down in the wet snow 10 meters from a creature that could incinerate him with a single breath. He looked into the dragon's golden eye. The dragon looked back at him. 2 seconds. 3. 5. 10. The dragon didn't strike. Too weak, or too smart, or both. Yvonne stood up, took a step forward, another, one more. The dragon growled, a low sound that made the ground vibrate, a warning. Yvonne stopped. He pulled a jade shard from his bosom. He showed it to the dragon. Then he slowly brought it to his own palm and made a cut. Blood trickled down his fingers. He showed the dragon his blood. "Here, I'm bleeding too. I know what this is." The dragon blinked. The growl subsided. Yvonne moved close to the wound. Blood pulsed from the artery. "Weaker than an hour ago." The dragon was dying. Yvonne placed his hand on the edge of the wound. The scales burned with cold. The icy dragon's body temperature was -40. His fingers went numb instantly. The chitinous armor on his palms offered no protection. He began counting aloud. 1 stitch. Subclavian artery. 4 stitches. Each stitch 20 centimeters. 80 in total. He pulled the thread from his finger. The first stitch entered the artery wall. The dragon's blood was blue, icy. It flowed down his arm and froze into a crust. The thread joined the two ends of the vessel. The bleeding slowed. Second stitch. Third. Fourth. The artery was sealed. Blood flowed inward, not outward. The dragon twitched. Iwon didn't let go. Suture 2. The shoulder joint. 6 stitches, 33 centimeters each. 2 meters. The bone fragments fell into place. The joint capsule closed. The cartilage was restored. The dragon stopped twitching. The golden eye watched the man's hands intently. Stitch 3. The muscle layer. A continuous suture. 6 meters. Iwon's fingers moved at the speed of a sewing machine. Muscle by muscle. Tendon after tendon. He was sewing up the dragon just as a surgeon sews up a human, layer by layer, from the inside out. His lungs went numb from the cold. His breath came out in a puff of steam. Spots swam before his eyes. He had used over 10 meters of thread. Stitch 4. Skin and scales. 9 meters, the longest suture of his life. The thread ran along the edge of the wound, pulling the dragon's scales back onto the flesh. The white plates closed without a gap, without a scar. 17.5 meters of thread, half his entire supply. Iwon finished at dawn on the 8th day. His hands wouldn't obey him. His legs wouldn't hold him. Darkness before his eyes. He fell forward, face first into the warm dragon's paw. The dragon's claws closed around his body, not squeezing, enveloping, like a nest. The last thing Iwon thought before passing out. Total, 17-8. 16 left. His health would recover overnight. It had to. He fell into darkness. Choi Iwon's threat index, officially F. The threat index of the creature that is now shielding him from the wind with its own body, A. Hansol didn't need him. Hansol bowed his head over him and closed his golden eyes. The bond of loyalty had worked. The thread remained inside the dragon, invisible, warm. A connection, not control. A pack. Iwon woke up under the dragon's wing, the left wing, the very one that had been torn off yesterday. It sheltered him from the snow and wind like a tent of white scales. He wiggled his fingers. They work. His legs. They work. His head was throbbing, but his vision was clear. He checked the vein. 18 meters too. Over the night, more than 2 meters had regenerated. The fracture and the proximity of an A-rank dragon had accelerated the regeneration. Fact. Write it on the wall when he returns to the cave. Hansol lay nearby. His enormous head was turned toward Iwon. His golden eye was open. The dragon was looking at the man who had patched his wing and asked for nothing in return. Iwon sat up. He looked at the wing. He ran his hand along the seam. The scales were fused perfectly. Beneath them, muscle. Beneath the muscle, bone. The joint rotated, full range of motion. 12%, so Doyon would have said in the operating room. 100%, said Iwon, looking at the living wing. Something clicked. Not a sound, a sensation, a word without a voice. Cold and clear as ice in the sun. Hansol spoke a single word directly into Iwon's mind. Weaver. Iwon froze. The dragon knew. The dragon understood what this power was. Not magic. Not sorcery. The seam. Weaver. A word from a language older than mankind. Iwon looked the dragon in the eye and nodded. Yes. Weaver. Hansol rose. 40 meters of body unfolded across the plateau. Snow flew in all directions. The left wing spread. A wingspan of 25 meters. The right wing spread. 2 wings. The full set. The dragon flapped its wings. The wind knocked Iwon off his feet. Hansol broke away from the ground. He rose 10 meters, 20, 50. He hovered in the gray sky, and an icy roar echoed across the rift. Every creature within a 10-kilometer radius heard that sound. The rank A ice dragon was flying again. Ivan lay in the snow and looked up at the 40-meter-long white shadow in the sky. An ally. His first ally. Threat index F with an A-rank ally. He laughed. Quietly. Without joy. Out of absurdity. Hojian, with his 47 commander-rank veins, had hired cleaners from the Crimson Lotus Guild to kill his younger brother in the rift. The cleaners were good. Average C+ rank on the threat index. A squad of 12 fighters. Expensive. Hojian paid in gold because he wanted Ivan's head, eaten by monsters, preferably with the face still on. Ivan didn't know that the cleaners had already entered the rift. He found out on the 10th day. Hansol found them first. The dragons circled over the rift every morning, a patrol. Not on Ivan's orders, on his own initiative. The thread of loyalty did not control, it bound. Hansol protected Ivan because he wanted to protect him. On the 10th day, the dragon returned and dropped an object at Ivan's feet. Metal, round. A medallion of the Crimson Lotus Guild. A red lotus on a black background. Ivan picked up the medallion. He turned it over. An engraving on the back. Squad 7. Commander No Chin Ho. 12 fighters. A bounty on their heads. The client is encrypted. Hansol transmitted the image directly into his mind. 12 figures in black cloaks, moving from the south, a 3-day journey. 2 of them have swords with runes. The rest are archers and spearmen, all ranging from knight to commander. 1024 veins, index C to C+. Ivan sat down on a rock, the medallion in his hand. 12 fighters, C+ each, against him with a range of 18 meters, and Hansol, rank A. The math was in his favor. Hansol alone could wipe out the entire squad in a minute. But Ivan wasn't thinking about victory. He was thinking about the material. 12 bodies, 12 sets of gear, runic weapons, and 12 pairs of hands accustomed to killing. Dead hands are useless. Living ones are more useful. But these 12 had come to kill him on Hogyan's orders, and if they remained alive, they would remain killers. Ivan turned the medallion over in his hand. The decision was made. Not now. In 3 days when they reached this place. He spent those 3 days productively. He killed 6 more E and D rank beasts, collected chitin, bones, muscle fibers, began work on his first full-fledged chimera, a wolf beetle, but not from a single beast, from 3. The skeleton of an ice scorpion, the muscles of a wolf beetle, the chitin of an unnamed 6-legged beast. Ivan sewed the parts together in the cave by the light of the dragon's frost. Hansol lay at the entrance and watched with his golden eye. Every stitch precise, every material cost recorded. Skeleton to muscle, 8 meters. Muscle to chitin, 6 meters. Nervous system, 12 stitches, 4 meters. The stitch of loyalty, half a meter. A total of 18.5 for 1 chimera. Almost the entire day's supply. The chimera opened its eyes at dawn on the 12th day. 6 legs, chitinous armor, a scorpion's tail, wolf jaws, the size of a horse. Threat index C, alive, breathing. Bound to Ivan by the thread of loyalty. He named her first, nameless. No sentiment, a tool. By evening on the 12th day, the purifiers were a 3-hour walk away. Ivan stood at the cave entrance. Behind him, the first. Above him, Hansol. 21 meters of life force. The consumption over the last few days has been monstrous. Regeneration can't keep up. Tomorrow is the battle. He looked south. Somewhere out there, beyond the mountains, beyond the snow, 1,000 kilometers away, stood the throne room of Songwon. Ho-young sat on his father's throne and awaited his younger brother's head. Ivan clenched the guild medallion in his fist. Day 12, Life 21, Index F, 2 allies, 1 rank A, 1 rank C, Tomorrow the cleaners will learn what a surgical incision is. The cleaners advanced in a wedge formation. 2 men with runic swords led the way. Behind them were 4 spearmen. 6 archers brought up the rear. All wore the black cloaks of the Crimson Lotus Guild. 12 men, average rank C+. Squad leader No Chin Ho marched in front. 22 veins, knight rank, on the verge of commander, C+ rating. A runic sword on his shoulder, 3 vials of blade seasoning poison on his belt. A professional. He had completed 47 contracts in his career and had never lost more than 2 fighters per operation. He considered this contract an easy one. The target was a single person, rank F, 2 veins, a former prince exiled to die, in the rift for a week, most likely dead. But the client pays for a head, not for assumptions. They were following a trail, footprints in the snow. A single set of feet, light, human. But Chinho noticed that the footprints were even. They didn't meander. No stumbling. A man walking through a rank D zone without staggering a week after exile, that's strange. He didn't show it. Oddities are for analysts. He's a soldier. Morning of the 13th day. 30 below. Snow. Wind. The sweepers moved toward the cave entrance, but Chinho raised his fist. Stop! He saw the entrance. Wide. Dark. The tracks led inside. He told the archers to take up positions on the flanks, the spearmen to form a semicircle. He himself went toward the entrance with his partner, Yan Biso. 21 lives. Also a knight. Also a professional. They didn't make it. On the 5th step toward the cave, No Chinho saw a shadow. A big one. A very big one. It emerged from behind the rock on the right. 6 legs. Chitinous armor. A scorpion's tail. A wolf's mouth. The size of a horse. A creature not found in any of the Alchemist Tower catalogs, but Chinho recognized the elements. Wolf beetle, a scorpion, something else. But they were sewn together. He saw the seams. No, he didn't see the seams. The joints were perfect. Flesh flowed into flesh without a boundary. This is not a monster of the underworld. This is a construct. Someone assembled it from pieces. But Chinho instantly reassessed the situation. He shouted for the squad to turn back. Too late. A larger shadow fell from the sky. Much larger. 40 meters. White scales. 2 wings. The Ice Dragon. Rank A. Hansol landed between the squad and their retreat route. The ground shook. Snow flew up in a wall. The 6 archers found themselves cut off. Between them and the spearmen stood a 40-meter mass of cold and fury. Yunbiso drew his runic sword. The blade glowed crimson. A good rune. Rank B indestructive power. Against an A-rank dragon, it's like a candle against a blizzard. But professionals don't run. They fought. Yunbiso leaped, high. The rune on the sword flared. The blow landed on Hansol's left side. The sword slid across the scales and left a scratch. A scratch. On an A-rank dragon. Yunbiso didn't have time to be surprised. Hansol's tail struck him mid-flight. 21 veins didn't save him. His body flew 30 meters and slammed into the rock. Alive, but unable to stand. Yevon emerged from the cave. He stood in chitin armor, made of plates from 10 creatures. His gray robe had long since been torn. He had tied the pieces of fabric to his belt. His face was calm, a thread on his hands, invisible, ready. But Chinho saw him, skinny, young, 19 years old, an outcast's spiral on his wrist. That's the target, 2 veins. But he wore chitin armor that Chinho had never seen on any warrior, and behind him stood a C-rank chimera, and hanging over it is an A-rank ice dragon. 2 veins. But Chin Ho realized something was wrong with the contract. He attacked anyway. Because 47 contracts over a career aren't fulfilled by those who ask questions. He struck with his rune-inscribed sword. The blade flew toward Iwon's throat. Rank C+ is fast. Iwon didn't move. He traced a finger through the air. A single gesture. 1/2 meter of thread. A runic sword. But Chin Ho shattered into 4 pieces. The hilt remained in his hand. The blade fell into the snow as 4 pieces of metal. The rune faded. No Chin Ho stared at the stump of the hilt. He saw the cut lines. Perfectly even. No heat, no impact, no flash. It just split apart, like fabric along a seam. He jumped back. He shouted at the archers to shoot. 6 arrows flew simultaneously. Iwon swept his hand from left to right. 3 meters of thread. The arrows scattered in the air. The shafts snapped. The tips were severed. The fletching cut off. A rain of splinters and metal. Not a single arrow reached its target. The spearman on the left lunged forward. 20 lives. Knight rank. A spear with a hardened steel tip. He struck down from above toward the head. Iwon stepped to the right. The spear passed by. Iwon touched the shaft with a finger. 1 stitch. Not a cut. A seam. He had sewn the spear to the ground. The shaft was firmly embedded in the stone. The spearman tugged. It didn't budge. He tugged with both hands. Not a millimeter. The spear had become part of the rock. The spearman let go of his weapon and backed away. His eyes were the size of coins. He saw how his spear had turned to stone, or the stone had turned into a spear. He didn't understand. None of them understood. A second spearman ran. A third dropped his weapon. A fourth stood and looked at Ivana. He saw the seams on the chitin armor. He saw the chimera behind the man stepping with 6 legs. He saw the dragon. He understood before the others. This isn't the target. It's a trap. But Chino stood with the hilt of his sword in his hand. 22 years of service, 47 contracts, 3 wars. He had survived it all. But he had never seen a sword shatter from the gesture of a hand, without magic, without G, without a flash. It wasn't power. It was something else. He asked who Iwon was. Iwon looked at him. Quietly. Calmly. The way a surgeon looks at a patient before delivering the diagnosis. Iwon replied that he was the one whose head Crown Prince Cho Ho-gyong had ordered. 2 veins. Rank F. A former prince. And now let no Chin Ho decide. He could try again. Or he could get down on his knees and tell everything he knew about the client. But Chin Ho looked at the 4 pieces of his sword in the snow. He looked at the dragon overhead. He looked at the chimera. He looked at the archers behind the dragon. Half of them had dropped their bows. One was weeping. A grown man of C rank was crying because he saw an arrow shatter in midair for no reason. But Chin Ho knelt down. He placed the stump of the hilt on the snow. He said the client was Crown Prince Cho Ho-gyong. Payment, 120 gold pieces through a frontman in the guild. The contact was a middleman named Kwan Michol. The order was to deliver the head and make the death look like an attack by beasts. Leave no traces. Yewon listened. He memorized every name, every number. The surgeon kept a record. He asked what No Chin Ho knew about Chancellor Yoon Gyong Ho. No Chin Ho frowned. He said the Chancellor was a level above. The Crimson Lotus Guild sometimes takes orders from his people. 3 years ago, there was a contract for General Ha Mu Kyung to slander and destroy. The guild refused the dirty part and took only the combat part. The general's right hand was cut off and thrown into the rift. Yevon froze. Ha Mu-gun, the general whom Ho-gyong had slandered 5 years ago, thrown into the rift. He's still here, alive or dead. Yevon turned to Hansol. The dragon was already looking at him. A golden eye, cold and clear. Hansol transmitted the image. A cave 20 kilometers to the north. A man, alive. 1 arm. Iwon looked at No Chin Ho, who was kneeling, at the 11 remaining purifiers, disarmed, broken, defeated in 3 minutes. He said they had a choice: return to Hogyo and report that the younger prince was dead, eaten by beasts, preferably with their heads intact, or not to return. But Chin Ho asked what would happen if they didn't return. Iwon said that then they would stay in the rift with him. But Chin Ho looked at the dragon, at the chimera, at the man in chitin armor with invisible power in his fingers. He realized this wasn't a choice between life and death. It was a choice between the side that would lose and the side that wouldn't. He bowed his head. 10 of the 11 purifiers knelt beside their commander. One ran off, south, into the snow. Iwon didn't stop him. Hansol watched the runner with his golden eye and looked questioningly at Iwon. Iwon shook his head. Let him run. Let him tell Hogyo what he saw. Let the older brother know that the younger one's head is still on his shoulders. Let him lie awake at night. Iwon turned north. 20 kilometers. One hand. General Ha Mujon. The 13th day. A vein 19 meters long. Index F. 3 allies. Hansol, rank A. First, rank C. And 10 former cleaners who had just bet on the right horse. Somewhere to the south, Hogyon is waiting for a head. He'll get something else. Iwon clenched the guild medallion, and the coil on his wrist pulled at his skin. He spoke quietly. I'm counting the stitches. Remember, I always count. Iwon was riding on Hansol's back, 20 kilometers north. The wind blew in his face so hard it made his eyes water. The chitin armor kept out the cold, but the exposed skin on his face burned. He clung to the crest on the dragon's neck and counted the seconds. Hansol covered the distance in 4 minutes. Below, crevices flashed by. Creatures' nests. Icy fields. From above, the rift looked like a wound on the Earth's body. Long, ragged, unhealing. Hansol began his descent. Iwon saw a cave, a narrow entrance, a fire pit in front of the entrance, long since extinguished. Creature bones nearby. Many. Dozens. Stacked neatly, by size. Someone had lived here long ago and lived methodically. Hansol landed 50 meters from the entrance. Iwon slid off his back. His legs sank knee-deep into the snow. He walked toward the cave. He stopped at the entrance. A smell. Human sweat. Smoke. Blood. Old and fresh. A sound came from inside. Metal on stone. A screech. Iwon stepped inside. Darkness. Then his eyes adjusted. The cave was deeper than the one Iwon lived in, 20 meters. The walls were scratched. Marks on the walls. Days. Hundreds of marks. Iwon counted the first row. 365. A year. 5 rows. 5 years. A man sat deep inside the cave, large, broad-shouldered. Even now, after 5 years in the rift, his body betrayed a former warrior. His muscles had withered, but the frame remained. His face was overgrown with a beard down to his chest. His eyes were black and unmoving, like a corpse's. His right arm was missing. The stump ended below his shoulder, covered in a rough scar, crooked, poorly done. No surgeon. His left hand held a spear shard that he was sharpening against a stone. That was what was grinding. The man looked at Iwon, at the chitin armor, at the exile's spiral on his wrist, at the young face. He said that exiles don't make it out here. There are too many beasts. His voice was hoarse, broken. 5 years without a proper conversation partner. Iwon replied that he wasn't an ordinary exile. The man smirked, crookedly, with one side of his mouth. He said that all exiles talk like that the first week. Then they stop. Then they die. Iwon asked directly, Hamugyon, commander of the Third Army, Songwon, slandered by Crown Prince Cho-ho-gyon. Stripped of his rank, his right hand was cut off by a court-martial, exiled to the icy rift 5 years ago. The man stopped sharpening his spear. His eyes came alive from their deadness, dangerously alive. He asked how a boy in a hut knew his name. Yevon said he was Cho Yevon, the younger prince Songwon, stripped of his title by the same man. Silence. 5 seconds. 10. Hamugyon looked at him, then at the spiral, then back at his face. He saw the family features, the jawline, the slit of his eyes, the king's son. He recognized him. Hamugyon lowered the spear shard. His left hand was trembling, not from the cold, from rage. He said that for 5 years he had been sitting here, sharpening a stone and dreaming of Hogyong's throat. Every day he carved a mark on the wall, and every day he swore he would reach the capital. And every day he realized that without his right hand, he wouldn't get more than 10 kilometers away. Iwon looked at the stump. He stepped closer. Hamugyon tensed. Iwon crouched down beside him. He raised his hand and touched the scar on the stump. His fingers ran over the tissue. The surgical assessment took 3 seconds. The scar is rough. The nerve endings are pinched. The bone has been sawed off unevenly. The muscle flap was turned inward. The work of an executioner, not a doctor. But the stump was alive. There was blood flow. There were nerves. It was workable. Iwon said he could give him a new arm. Hamugyon froze. He looked at Iwon as if he were mad. What kind of arm? Iwon pulled a bundle from his belt. He had been preparing it for 2 days. Inside the bundle lay a limb, not human. The front paw of the ice scorpion killed the day before yesterday, stripped of excess tissue, sized to fit, 4 joints, 6 fingers, chitinous armor on the outside, muscle fibers on the inside, claws at the tips, capable of crushing stone. Hamugyon looked at it and said nothing. Iwon explained. He would sew the scorpion's paw to the stump, nerve to nerve, muscle to muscle, bone to bone. The foreign tissue will become human thanks to the suture. There will be no rejection. Hamugyon will feel the new hand as his own. Move it, squeeze, strike. Hamugyon was silent for a long time, a full minute. Then he asked what the price was. Iwon said the price was loyalty. Not slavery, loyalty. He is building an army. He needs a commander who knows how to lead men into battle. Hamugyon will be able to take revenge on Hogyon, but on Iwon's terms, and in his time. Hamugyon looked at his stump, at the scorpion's paw in the bundle, at the face of the prince, who is 19 years old and speaks of loyalty with the intonation of a general twice his age. He placed the spear shard on the ground. He held out his left hand. He said he served. Iwon nodded. The operation took 2 hours, the most difficult of all he had ever performed, more difficult than a dragon. Hansol was a single being with a single anatomy. Here, there were 2 different biologies, a scorpion of the underworld and a human, nerves of different diameters, muscle fibers of different types, bone of different densities. In 12 years of surgery, he had never done anything like this with So-do-yun. But So-do-yun had no suture thread. 1 suture, bone, 4 stitches, 1.5 meters. A fragment of a human humerus had fused with the chitinous endoskeleton of a Herpion's paw. Stitch 2, nerves, 12 stitches, 3 meters, each nerve to each nerve. Iwon worked with the precision of a microsurgeon, every stitch through the correct bundle. 1 wrong connection and Mugyong would feel pain with every movement for the rest of his life. Stitch by stitch. His fingers didn't tremble. A surgeon doesn't tremble. Stitch 3, muscles, continuous, 4 meters. The scorpion's muscle fiber accepted human blood. It worked. The claw twitched. Ha Mu-gyong hissed in pain. Iwon told him to bear it. Mu-gyong clenched his teeth. He endured. 5 years in the rift teach you to endure. Stitch 4, skin to chitin, 3 meters. The edge of the human skin fused with the carapace plate. The boundary vanished. No physician in the world could say where the human ended and the scorpion began. The stitch of loyalty, 1/2 meter. Not for control, for communication, so that Iwon could sense the condition of his hand from a distance. If rejection began, he would be the first to know. 12 meters total. 7 meters of nerve left after the operation. Critically low. Iwon had overused it. Blackness swam before his eyes. Blood trickled from his right eye. A thin stream, red on white. The first symptom of double overuse. He wiped the blood with the back of his hand and ordered himself not to fall. Not here, not now. Ha Mu-gyong opened his eyes. He looked to the right. Where there had been emptiness for 5 years, there was now a hand. Not human. Better. 6 fingers in a chitin glove. 4 joints. He clenched his fist. The chitin creaked. The stone beneath his fingers cracked. He unclenched it. Clenched it again. Raised his hand to his face. Twisted it. Every finger obeyed. Every joint worked. He felt the cold air on the tips of his 6 fingers. He felt the texture of the stone. Ha Mu-gyong, General Songwon, slandered and maimed 5 years ago, looked at his new hand, then at Iwon, at the blood flowing from his right eye, at the tremor in his hands, at the price he had paid. Ha Mu-gyong knelt down. For the first time in 5 years, he said that to the very last stitch in his body, he served the House of Cho, not the Crown Prince, the younger prince. Iwon wiped away the blood. 7 meters of vein, blood from his eye, his hands trembling. He smiled, precise, delicate, like a scalpel. The 14th day, a 7-meter-long vein, Index D, allies. Hansol, rank A. First, rank C, 10 cleaners, mid-rank C, and General Ha Mu-gyong with a hand that could crush a knight's skull with a single squeeze. Mu-gyong's rank before his injury was B, now with a new hand and a scorpion claw on every finger, B+, at least. Iwon closed his eyes. He needed sleep. 30 meters of vein per night, maybe more. Tomorrow, he'll building. Iwon woke up and measured the vein first thing. 39 meters. 32 had regenerated overnight, a record. His body had responded to the overload by growing, like a muscle after a tear. The vein had become longer than it had been before the operation on Mu-gyong. He wrote the number on the wall next to the previous ones. The column was growing. 35, 33 and 7, 38, 21, 19, 7, 39. Slumps after difficult surgeries and surges after recovery. The amplitude is increasing. The tendon grows from stress. The conclusion is simple. To become stronger, you have to push yourself to the limit. A surgeon knows this well. Residency works the same way. 120 hours a week. The body breaks down. Then it rebuilds itself. It becomes faster, more precise, colder. Iwon emerged from Mu-gyong's cave, the morning of the 15th day. Hansol lay on the plateau. The first sat at the entrance like a dog at the door. 10 former cleaners had set up camp 100 meters below, but Chin-ho organized a watch. Perimeter, bonfires, discipline. Professionals remain professionals even when they switch sides. Ha Mu-gyong stood by the rock and tested his hand. In his left hand, he held a stone the size of a head. With his right hand, he squeezed that stone. 6 fingers in the gauntlet closed. The stone burst. Shards flew out in a fan. Mu-gyong didn't smile. He squeezed another one, and another, methodically. He was getting used to the power. He memorized the pressure, the amplitude, the speed. A general doesn't play with weapons. A general calibrates them. Ivan approached. He said construction was starting today. Mugyong asked what they were building. Ivan pointed to the rock massif north of the cave, a sheer wall, 300 meters high, 200 meters wide. Granite. He said one word: fortress. Stone upon stone, a wall without a gap. Ivan stood before the rock and calculated the volume of the walls, thickness, height, perimeter, interior spaces. Barracks for 50 men, an armory, a meat storage, a pen for chimeras, a landing pad for Hansol, a medical bay. Yes, medical. A surgeon needs an operating room. The calculation showed 1,200 meters of stone. Litosh consumes the vein more sparingly than Biosh. Stone is dead. It's easier to stitch up the dead. 1 meter of stone costs half a meter of thread. 1,200 meters of stone, 600 meters of thread. He has 39. If he uses 30 meters a day and regenerates 32 at night, 20 days. No, the thread will grow under the strain. 15-day forecast. For 3 nights, he'll be on the verge of double overexertion, blood from the eyes, convulsions, risk of death, acceptable. He started at noon. The first seam, 2 pieces of granite. The thread went into the stone like butter. The surfaces closed. The joint line vanished. The 2 stones became one. The cleaners watched, but Chinho stood with his mouth agape. In 22 years of service, he had seen earth mages who moved stones. He had seen rune masons who reinforced walls. But he had never seen 2 stones become one without a trace, without a rune, without a spell, just a touch and a seam. The grew. Ivan worked until dark. His hands burned, his veins melted. 30 meters on the first day, 9 left. He collapsed onto the stones at the base of the wall. Mugion picked him up, carried him into the cave. Morning. 41 meters of vein, a gain of 2 meters beyond restoration. His body was rebuilding itself. He continued. Second day, 32 meters of seam. Day 3, 35. Day 4, the walls rose 6 meters, 2 meters thick, granite without a single crack. But Chinho tapped the wall and found no seams. The stone was monolithic, as if the rock had been carved out whole and set in place. On the 5th day of construction, the first observer crawled up. A D-rank creature, an ice lizard, 3 meters from nose to tail. It crawled out of a crack and froze, staring at the wall, at the dragon, at the people. The chimera reacted before Ivan did. It leaped. Its scorpion tail pierced the lizard right through. 5 seconds. Ivan didn't even turn around. He was stitching the wall. The 7th day of construction, the 22nd day in the rift. The fortress was taking shape. 4 walls, watchtowers at the corners, an inner courtyard. Ivan began the interior partitions, barracks, storage rooms, an operating room. Mugion commanded the cleaners. He divided them into trios, patrols, hunting, reconnaissance. He commanded as if he had never stopped. His right hand, with its scorpion claw, gestured just as precisely as his left. His nerves had fully settled in. On the 10th day of construction, Ivan was sewing the ceiling of the main hall. Night. Torches. He stood on scaffolding made of scorpion bones and pulled the thread through the granite slabs. The thread was running out. 3 meters. Blood from both eyes. His hands were shaking. He saw the ceiling through a red haze. The last stitch. The slab was in place. The ceiling was closed. Paxson Fortress was sealed from above. Ivan dropped his hands. He fell from the scaffolding, 3 meters down. Mugion caught him with his right hand. 6 chitinous fingers closed around the prince's body like a cradle. Ivan was unconscious. Blood flowed from his eyes, nose, and ears. Triple overexertion. Another step would have killed him. But Chin-ho ran up. He looked at the body. He looked at Mugyong. He asked if he was alive. Mugyong checked his pulse. There was one, weak, thread-like. But there was one. He was alive. But Chin-ho raised his head and looked at the ceiling, at the walls, at the fortress that one man had built in 10 days from solid rock, alone, without earth magic, without runes, without an army, with his hands, with thread, with blood from his eyes. He said quietly, "This is not a man." Mugyong laid Iwon on the hides in the medical bay, the first completed room of the fortress. Iwon didn't regain consciousness for 3 days. Hansol didn't fly away. He lay on the platform and stared at the wall behind which the weaver lay. His golden eyes didn't blink. 3 days. On the 4th, Iwon opened his eyes. He checked the vein. 80 meters. During 3 days of deep sleep, the vein had grown to twice its previous maximum length. His body had endured triple overexertion and survived. And it had adapted. The vein had become thicker, denser. A meter of the new vein carried more threads than before. Iwon sat down on the hides. The fortress stood around him. Granite, monolithic, his. Day 32, vein 80. Personal threat index conservatively estimated at C. The Pexon fortress is ready. Outside, the wind howled. Inside, it was quiet. The warmth from Hansol passed through the walls. Iwon leaned against the wall and whispered, the spiral on his wrist, mouth and guts. Not today. Soon. On the 40th day, Sun Da-hee arrived in Paxson. 16 years old, skinny, in a tattered alchemist cloak without the tower's insignia. The cloak had once been white. Now it was gray with dirt and blood. She had crossed the rift alone, 20 kilometers from the southern pass to the fortress, unarmed, no veins, no rank, with a single bag of scrolls on her back. No one understood how she had survived. A cleaner sentry spotted her by the southern wall, a small figure crawling through the snow. He reported to Mugyong. Mugyong reported to Iwon. Iwon went out onto the wall and looked down. The girl was lying in the snow, motionless, breathing. He could see steam coming from her mouth. 2nd-degree frostbite on her hands. Exhaustion. Dehydration. Iwon climbed down. He picked her up, light as a child. He carried her to the medical bay, laid her on the table. A table made of solid stone bolted to the floor. Surgeon So Doyon's operating room was in use again. Another world, different walls, the same table, the same silence. Ivan treated the frostbite. Biosutures on the damaged tissue of her hands. 1.5 meters. A trifle. The frozen tissue came back to life. Her fingers turned pink. Da-hee opened her eyes an hour later. She saw a ceiling made of solid stone, seamless walls, a man in chitin armor sitting across from her, staring at her expressionlessly. She spoke a single sentence. She said she knew who had killed his mother. Iwon didn't flinch. His face didn't change. But a nerve inside his body twitched, a single tremor. He asked where she was from. Sun Da-hee, the daughter of physician Sun Chul-min, court physician Songwon, the very same man who had delivered Iwon's mother 19 years ago, the very same man whom Chancellor Yoon Kyung-ho had killed a month after the birth. Sun Da-hee was 2 years old when her father was found dead in his office, officially a heart attack, unofficially poison from the Alchemist Tower, a poison that left no trace, odorless. Her father knew too much. He had seen the vein of the infant Iwon. He realized she was the only one, solid. He recorded it in a scroll. The Chancellor had been searching for that scroll for 16 years. He never found it. Because Da-hee's mother had hidden it in the wall of their house behind a brick covered in clay. Da-hee found it at 14 when the house was slated for demolition. She read it. She understood. Not everything, but enough. She ran to the Alchemist Tower because she was a student, because she believed the tower stood for knowledge and justice. In the tower, she stole 3 more scrolls about the cult of the Weaver, about the Great Rift, about how 300 years ago the 9 elders split the continent, and about one woman who tried to sew it back together and who was killed for it. The tower found out about the theft 2 days later. They sent the hunters after Dahi. She ran for 2 months through 3 kingdoms, through the mountains, northward, to the only place the tower's hunters would not go, to the icy rift. She had heard rumors, strange rumors, that a fortress had appeared in the rift, that a man lived there who sewed stone, who flew on a dragon. She came to this man. Iwon listened, silently, every word. When she fell silent, he reached out his hand. Dahi took 4 scrolls from her bag, yellowed, fragile. Iwon took the first one, unrolled it. The handwriting of the court physician. Small, precise. The examination report for the newborn Prince Choi Iwon. Date of birth, weight, height. And a line underlined twice. A single silk vein. Unbroken. A Weaver-type anomaly. Compatibility with the Weaver cult's records, Category 5. The last recorded case was 312 years ago. Iwon held the scroll. He stared at the line. His father's healer knew from day one, and the Chancellor killed him for that knowledge. He took the second scroll, the Tower Scroll, ancient, 300 years old, a description of the Weaverous cult, a race of people with a single continuous thread, the ability to sew matter, living and dead. They held the continent together. The Great Rift was created by the 9 elders of the tower to destroy the last Weaver. The rift killed the Weaver. The continent split apart. The 9 fragments became 9 kingdoms. The tower became the arbiter. A divided world is more profitable than a whole one. The third scroll. A list of slain weavers. 312 names from 100 years of hunting. The last name. So Yun-hwa, Iwon's mother. Date of death, 19 years ago. Cause of death, poisoning. Perpetrator, Chancellor Yoon Kyung-ho on the orders of the 3rd Elder, Moon Ji-hak. Iwon stared at his mother's name. So Yun-hwa, poisoned. Not childbed fever, poison. The Chancellor, the 3rd Elder, names, specific ones. He rolled up the scroll. His hands didn't tremble. His voice didn't tremble. His eyes were dry. He turned to Dahi. He asked what was in the 4th scroll. Dahi said that the 4th scroll was a map, the location of what the tower had buried beneath the Great Rift after the murder of the last Weaver. Ye-won unrolled the 4th scroll, a map, detailed. The Great Rift, beneath it, a chamber. In the chamber was an object. The object was described in a single line, the sarcophagus of the first Weaver. Iwon rolled up the map. He placed all 4 scrolls in a stone chest on the wall. He closed the lid with a seal. The stone fused shut. Only he could open it. He looked at Dahi. He told her she was staying in Pexon. Dahi nodded. She hadn't come here as a guest. She had come to fight. Iwon stepped out of the medical bay. Hansol was lying on the platform watching him. Golden eyes. The dragon conveyed a single word. Weaver. He knew. He remembered. Dragons live for thousands of years. Hansol remembered the time when the Weavers walked the earth. Iwon stood on the wall of the Pexong fortress. The wind ruffled the remnants of the gray robe at his waist. 82 meters high, the 40th day. He knew everything now. Who killed his mother? Why? On whose orders? He knew the names. Chancellor Yoon Kyung-ho, the 3rd Elder Moon Ji-hak, Crown Prince Chae Ho-kyung, a tool in their hands. The spiral on his wrist pulsed. Iwon looked south. Quietly, steadily, with his lips alone.
I know your names, all three of you. I will sew you up one by one. On the 50th day, the Hunter Towers appeared in the rift. 3 of them. Ivan was standing on the watchtower when Hansol transmitted the image. 3 figures in white cloaks, moving from the east, not from the south like the purifiers, from the east, straight from the alchemist's tower. They walked without hiding. The Hunter Towers do not hide. They have no one to hide from. Each had a symbol on their chest, scales within a jade circle. Ranks. Ivan asked Hansol for more details. The dragon descended. 3 people. The first is tall, 36 veins, commander.
Index B-. The second is stocky, 31 veins, also a commander. Index C+. The third is a woman, 44 veins, a commander on the verge of becoming a lord. Index B. They were after the Dahi, after the scrolls. The tower wants the scrolls back, and it wants silence. The dead are quieter than the living. Mugen lined up his fighters at the gate. 10 purifiers. Mugyong himself. 6 chimeras that Ivan had created over the past month, each a C-rank wolf beetle. The first among them was the largest. Mugyong assigned positions. The chimeras on the flanks, the humans in the center, Hansol in the sky, Ivan on the wall. The hunters approached the gates to within 100 meters and stopped. A woman in front, tall, thin, her face covered with white cloth down to her eyes. Her eyes were gray, cold. She surveyed the fortress, the walls, the towers, the chimeras on the walls, the dragon in the sky. Ivan saw her eyes linger on Hansol. For a second, something resembling surprise flashed in them. An A-rank dragon, in the rift, with a human. She suppressed her emotion and addressed the fortress, loudly. Her voice was clear and steady as a bell. She announced that they were the hunters of the third elder, Munji Hak. They demanded the surrender of the fugitive disciple, Song Da-hee, and the stolen scrolls. Resistance would be considered an act of hostility against the tower. Silence. Wind. Snow. Ivan stood on the wall. Chitin armor. A jade shard at his belt. 85 meters high. He asked from above. The third elder, Munji Hak. The very one who gave the order to poison So Yanhua 19 years ago. The woman froze. She hadn't expected anyone in the rift to know that name, and even less so this story. She replied that she didn't understand what he was talking about. Ivan repeated himself. So Yanhua, the last weaver, killed on the third elder's orders, poison without a trace. Chancellor Yun Kyung-ho was the executor. He said the scrolls would remain here. Dahi would remain here. The catchers could leave and relay a single phrase to the third elder. The weaver has returned. The woman paled. The weaver! The word the tower had struck from all records 300 years ago. The word that signified the end of the 9 elders' monopoly. She turned to her 2 companions, nodded. All 3 attacked simultaneously. The woman thrust her hand forward. A wave of G burst from her palm, pure, concentrated, 44 veins at full power, index B. The wave struck the fortress wall. The granite shuddered, but it didn't crack. Litashov, a seamless wall, a monolith. A rank B wave cannot split a monolith. It dissipated like waves crashing against a rock. The woman struck again, and again. The wall stood firm. 2 commanders rushed toward the gate, the first with a sword, a runic one, 36 veins behind the strike. The sword slammed into the gate, sparks, a screech, a dent, deep. But the gate was intact. The second commander struck with a G spear, 31 veins. The spear sank a centimeter into the stone and got stuck. Ivan watched from the wall, counting the blows, measuring the power. 44 veins is roughly 800 G units per strike. The Pexon wall can withstand up to 2,000, a reserve. But he wasn't going to wait for the hunters to tire. He leaped from the wall,
8 meters. His chitin armor absorbed the impact. His knees buckled. The stones beneath his feet cracked. He straightened up 5 meters from the hunter woman. She turned around.
A wave of ghee was already gathering in her palm. Ivan ran his finger from right to left. 1/2 meter of thread. The woman's white cloak split from her throat to her waist, smoothly, without a snag. The fabric opened like a cut page. Under the cloak was light chainmail. Ivan ran his finger along it again. 1 meter of thread. The chainmail split apart. The links scattered onto the snow like beads, each link cut in half, perfectly. The woman stood without a cloak and without armor, in just a shirt, in the freezing cold. She fired a ghee wave point blank, 5 meters. Ivan didn't flinch. He raised his palm. 3 meters of thread. A net, thinner than a spider web, stronger than steel. The ghee wave struck the net and stopped. The threads trembled, but they held. The ghee dissipated at the edges, harmless. Ivan clenched his palm. The net closed. A 3-meter cocoon of threads wrapped around the ghee wave and extinguished it. The woman watched this. 44 veins, a rank on the verge of Lord, Index B, and her point-blank strike was stopped by a palm. The palm of a man with 2 veins, according to the tower's records. She jumped back. She shouted for the 2 to retreat. Too late. Hansol landed behind them. 40 meters of white scales, ice on the claws. The way back was blocked. Chimeras emerged from left and right. 6 C-rank wolf beetles of C-rank. The first snapped its scorpion tail. Mugion stood at the gate with 10 cleaners. His right hand, with the scorpion claw, was relaxed. Ready. The hunters found themselves in a ring. The first commander threw his sword. The second commander threw his spear. The woman stood. She threw nothing. She looked at Ivan. He approached. Close. Within arm's reach. He spoke softly. She could return to the third elder and repeat what he had said. The weaver had returned. Or she could stay here. Forever. The woman swallowed. Her gray eyes darted from the dragon to the chimeras, from the chimeras to the man in the chitin whose thread had just nullified her most powerful strike. She chose life. All 3 chose life. Ivan let them go, without weapons, without cloaks, without armor, in shirts in the cold. 20 kilometers to the nearest pass. They would survive. Commanders are resilient, but they would remember the cold, and the shame, and the word, Weaver. Ivan watched as 3 white figures receded into the snow. Mugion stood beside him. He asked if it wouldn't have been better to kill them. Ivan replied that the dead don't deliver messages. Mugion grunted. He accepted it. That evening, Ivan sat in the medical bay. Dahi was deciphering the 3rd scroll, the list of slain weavers. 312 names. She read aloud, name by name. Ivan listened. Each name a person with a single unbroken thread, each killed by the tower. Each could have woven the world. Not a single one made it. 312. And his mother, the 313th. He is the 314th, if they get to him. If. Ivan looked at the fortress wall. Granite. His thread. The 50th day. Vein 85. Index C. The fortress stands. The dragon flies. The army grows. The trappers flee. He clenched the jade shard. From Yanhua. Mother. 313th. He spoke softly. I will sew back together what you have torn apart. Everything. Down to the last stitch. On the 90th day, the fortress of Baeksong numbered 32 fighters, 10 former cleaners, 8 defectors from other exile units who had heard rumors of the fortress and the rift and crawled up to the walls, 14 former convicts and outcast scavengers Mugion found in caves within a 50-kilometer radius, alive, hungry, desperate, people the world had cast aside. Iwon accepted every one of them, not out of kindness, out of calculation. Every extra fighter is a patrol, a hunt, gathering materials. Every gatherer is a creature killed and butchered. Every creature is chitin, bones, muscles, material for chimeras, an assembly line. Mugion built the system in a month. Teams of 3 fighters, 6 hours on patrol, 6 hours hunting, 6 hours rest, 6 hours drill training. An army. Small, hungry, vicious, but an army. Iwon worked every day. Surgeries in the morning, biostitching the wounded, hybridization. By the 90th day, he had created 6 fully fledged C-rank wolf beetle chimeras, one of each of the 3 types of creatures, each built according to an improved design. The first version had vulnerable joints, the second version did not. Iwon learned from each specimen, just as a surgeon learns from every operation. The first patient is worse than the 10th. The 10th is worse than the 100th. By the 5th chimera, he was using 14 meters instead of 18. By the 6th, 12. Efficiency, precision, minimal sutures, maximum effect. By the 90th day, Iwon was coughing up blood for a week, every morning. Building additional walls and underground passages for Pexon cost him 200 meters of life force over 3 nights in a row. Double the usual expenditure every night. His body protested. His lungs burned. Thick, dark blood flowed from his throat. Daki begged him to stop. Mugion remained silent. The general knows that the commander decides for himself when enough is enough. Iwon decided it wasn't enough. One more wall, one more underground passage, one more meter of wire driven into the stone. When Hogyong arrives, and he will arrive, the fortress must stand so that 3 commanders with an army cannot breach the gates in a day. On the 90th day, he stopped coughing up blood. His lungs had healed. The wire showed 80 meters. Exactly. He climbed onto the wall. Morning. Frost. The north wind carried the scent of the underworld. Hansol circled at a height of 300 meters. Patrol. The dragon transmitted the image. Clear. No hunters. No cleaners. No new creatures of rank higher than D. Silence. A suspicious silence. Iwon knew that the tower had received a message from the hunters 2 months ago. He knew that Hogyon had received a report from the escaped cleaner even earlier. 2 months of silence. Someone is preparing a response. A major response. Dahi confirmed it. She had decrypted the intercepted message. The dove flew into the fortress by accident. It had lost its way in a blizzard. A scroll was tied to its leg. The tower's cipher. Dahi knew the cipher. A message from the third elder Moon Ji-hak to Chancellor Yoon Kyung-ho. 6 lines. An anomaly in the rift has been confirmed. Type, Weaver. Category 5. Destruction is the top priority. Awaiting your contact for coordination. Your contact is Hogyong. Coordination means a joint strike. The tower and Songwon together. Against a single person in a fortress at the edge of the world. Yewon read the message. He rolled it up. Put it in the chest with the other scrolls. Sat down on a stone bench in the operating room. He thought. The tower fears the Weaver. The tower will do anything to destroy him before he gets stronger. He needs time. He doesn't have it. He needs power. More than C, more than B. He needs a breakthrough. On the 100th day, Mugion brought back a find from reconnaissance. His trio stumbled upon a fissure deep within the rift, a deep one. The walls of the fissure were covered in bones, huge ones, the bones of a creature that was larger than a dragon, larger than any A-rank creature. At the bottom of the fissure, a skeleton, intact, ribs as tall as a house, a spine half a kilometer long, a skull, horns. each horn 20 meters long, a leviathan. Mujeong had seen illustrations in military scrolls, an S-rank creature, last seen 100 years ago, thought to be extinct. This one is dead, long ago. The bones are white and dry, but leviathan bones do not rot. They store G inside like a battery, even when dead. Next to the bones, Mujeong found a second skeleton, human, in armor 100 years old. The armor bore the insignia of the northern nomads, a lord rank, 50 veins or more. The skeleton is intact. The spine is intact. This man did not die from wounds, from hunger or cold. Stuck in a crevice next to the one who killed him, or didn't kill him. Maybe they killed each other. It doesn't matter. What matters is what lies at the bottom. A rank S leviathan bone. A lord's spine. Two materials, one from the underworld, the other human. Iwon descended into the crevice the next day, ropes made of scorpion tendons. Hansol waited above. He couldn't fit through the gap. Iwon's descent took 40 minutes. The walls narrowed, bones jutted out of the rock, Leviathan's ribs. He touched them. A low hum resonated within the bones, a low hum, like an engine. The dead S-rank creature stored more energy in its bones than the entire Songwon courtyard. The bottom of the crevice, Leviathan's spine. Next to it, the Lord's skeleton in rusted armor. Iwon sat down between them. He looked at one, then the other. A plan was forming in his head. Not a chimera, not armor, a golem. Leviathan's bone as a frame, the Lord's spine as a core, the dead bone of the underworld sewn together with the dead bone of a human. Leviathan's blood as fuel, the Lord's will as a shadow, the thread of loyalty as a leash. Calculation. Leviathan's spine, 30 segments, 2 meters each, 60 meters of bone. The Lord's spine, 33 vertebrae, 70 centimeters. Sew the human spine inside Leviathan's spine as a rod, bone to bone, Litoshoff. Leviathan's ribs as limbs, 4 legs. The skull as a head, horns as weapons. Total wire consumption, Iwon calculated, 150 meters, more than he has. He has 80. He won't be able to do it in a single session. 3 nights, 50 meters each, with recovery between sessions. Each session is double the consumption. Blood from the eyes, fainting. 3 days of work on the brink of death. He began that very night. The first session, the Lord's spine to Leviathan spine. 50 stitches, each stitch a meter, bone to bone. The thread pierced the dead material and joined the two skeletons into one. Leviathan's ki surged through the channel of the human spine. The bones glowed. Blue light, cold, dead, but powerful. Iwon sewed until dawn. His life force was at 0. Blood from his eyes. He crawled out of the crack on his hands. Mujeong pulled him up. Second session the following night. Ribs like limbs. 40 stitches. The bones moved. On their own. The gi inside was pushing them. The golem was assembling like a skeleton in an anatomical theater. Bone by bone. Rib by rib. The third session. The skull, the horns, the final stitches. The stitch of loyalty. The thread entered the Lord's dead spine and closed the circuit. The golem stood in the fissure. The bones creaked. The earth trembled. Iwon lay on the edge of the fissure and looked down. Leviathan's head rose from the darkness. Dead eye sockets burned blue. Horns scraped the walls. The golem emerged from the crack, 15 meters tall, 4 legs made of ribs, a skull with horns, a spine tail. Inside, a human spine like a heart, Pekwa, white bone, S rank. Mujeong stood nearby. He looked up. His face. Iwon saw that face. That's how people look at what shouldn't exist. That's how they look at a god.
or at the end of the world. Mujung quietly said that it was impossible. Ivan lay on the ground. Blood flowed from his eyes and ears. Vitality, 0. Total depletion. He whispered, "Perhaps." The 150th day. Vitality after recovery, 110. A leap. A record. The body had survived 3 consecutive nights of double overexertion and responded by growing 30 meters.
Ivan's personal index, B. Pequod's index, S. Pexan Fortress. Hansol, rank A. Pequod, rank S. 6 C-rank chimeras, 32 fighters. General Mugyong, B+ rank. Scout Dahi with a map to the first Weaver's sarcophagus. And Hogyong in the south is receiving letters from the tower regarding strike coordination. Let him coordinate. Let him count his 47 veins. Ivan clenched the spiral on his wrist. He counts the stitches. Hogyon declared Yvonne a demonic spellcaster on the 160th day. Messengers carried the decree throughout all 9 kingdoms. The text was read aloud in the town squares. Former Prince Choi Iwon has conspired with the creatures of the underworld. He stitches monsters into god-abhorrent chimeras. He has subjugated a dragon through a dark ritual. He poses a threat to all of Hyungyang. A bounty on his head, 500 gold pieces, dead or alive. The Church of Heavenly Fire has taken up the cause. Priests in the temples cursed Yvonne's name during morning services. Demonic sorcerer, conspirator, heretic. Words that turn a man into a target. Yvonne learned of the decree from Dahi. She intercepted the second pigeon carrying the report.
Unrolled the scroll, read it aloud. Ivan listened, his face unmoving. When she finished, he asked only one thing. The Tournament of the 9 Kingdoms. When? Dahi checked. A scroll with the tournament schedule was attached to the report. The 200th day, the capital of Songwon, Chongwon Square. All 9 kingdoms are sending fighters. Open registration for any rank. A tradition. Even a commoner with a single vein can enter the arena if he pays the entry fee. Hogyong will be there, on his father's throne, in the crown he hasn't had time to steal yet, but which he tries on every night. The dignitaries will be there, those very ones. Chancellor Yoon Gyong-ho will sit at his right hand. The third elder, Moon Ji-hak, will arrive from the tower as the honorary judge. Everyone in one place. Everyone in plain sight. Yewon said one word. Let's go. Mujan didn't argue. He had been waiting for this. 50 days to prepare. Yvonne spent them in the operating room. Every day. From dawn till dusk. He created 8 more chimeras. Not wolf beetles, more complex. Each made from 5 different species of creatures. The skeleton of an ice scorpion, the muscles of a wolf beetle, the chitin of the armored mantis, the nervous system of the shadow serpent, the eyes of the northern eagle owl. 5 species in a single body, each a rank B chimera. He called them generals. 8 stitched together generals, 30 meters of tendon per one, 240 meters for the 8. The tendon grew under the strain. After each operation, he fainted. After each feint, there was growth. By the 181st day, the thread had reached 130 meters. By the 191st, 140. Grade A-. Yvonne felt the difference. The thread had become denser, faster, more precise. He could pull 10 threads at once. Before, the maximum was 3. Each thread was controlled by a separate finger. 10 fingers, 10 threads, 10 incisions in an instant. A surgeon works with 2 hands. A weaver works with 10. On the 195th day, Yevon gathered everyone in the main hall of Texong. Mujan.
But Chin Ho, Da He, 32 fighters, 14 chimeras, Hansol on the platform behind the wall, Pek Gua at the gate. Yevon stood in the center. His hidden armor was covered with black cloth.
He had found black silk on the corpse of a merchant whom the creature had dragged into the rift 3 weeks ago. He sewed a hanbok from it. No crest, no family character, black on black. He announced the plan. The 9 Kingdoms tournament. He would go alone. He would register as an unnamed fighter with no rank. He would make it through the preliminaries, the quarterfinals, the semifinals, the finals. One day, from F to Commander, in full view of all 9 kingdoms, in full view of Hojian, the Chancellor, the Elder. Hansol will take him to the arena at dawn on the 200th day. Baekwa will remain in Baekseon. Mujian will ensure the fortress's defense during his absence. If Iwon does not return within 3 days, Mujian takes command. Mujian didn't blink. He nodded. Da He nodded. But Chin Ho nodded. On the 198th day, Iwon climbed onto Hansol's back. Dawn. Frost. Paeksong Fortress behind them. 6 sewn-together generals by his side. 8 remain with Mujiang. The dragon flapped its wings. Wind. Snow. The ground receded below. Hansol set a course south. 1,000 kilometers. 2 days of flight. Iwon lay on the dragon's back and gazed at the gray sky. 140 meters of life, index A-. The outcast spiral on his wrist. A shard of his mother's jade pendant in his pocket. A list in his head. Hogyong, the Chancellor, the Elder, the dignitaries. Every face, every laugh, every glance. He remembered. The surgeon records everything. Hansol transmitted the image. Warmth, light, one word. Brother. Iwon closed his eyes. The dragon carried him home, to the place that had exiled him 200 days ago. At dawn on the 200th day, the capital of Songwon awoke to a sound. A low rumble, a vibration. The window panes rattled. People ran out into the streets. They looked up. The ice dragon hung in the sky above Cheongwon Square. 40 meters, white scales, 2 wings, a wingspan of 50 meters. The shadow of its wings covered half the square. The crowd screamed. The guards grabbed their swords. Hogyong ran out onto the palace balcony, in a robe, without a crown, his face pale. A dragon, rank A, over his capital. Hansol descended. A figure in a black hanbok leaped from behind the dragon's back. She landed on the stones of the square. Her knees buckled. Heaton armor glinted beneath the fabric. 6 chimera generals leaped down after her. 6 rank B creatures. 6 beasts not found in any catalog. They lined up behind the man in black. The crowd froze. The guards froze. Hogyong on the balcony froze. Iwon walked to the registration desk. The clerk looked up. He saw the chiton beneath the black fabric, the exile's spiral on the wrist, a young face, calm eyes. The clerk asked for a name. Iwon answered, no name, no rank. A fee. He placed a gold coin on the table. Where did an exile get gold? From a merchant's corpse, the same merchant who had given him silk. The clerk took the coin. He wrote it down. Nameless, rankless. Iwon turned and walked toward the arena. Behind him were 6 generals. Above him, Hansol circled in the morning sky. The crowd parted, not out of respect, out of fear. The 200th day. The tournament would begin in an hour. Iwon sat down on a bench by the arena. He placed his hands on his knees. He closed his eyes. He waited. First match, qualifying round. Opponent, a knight from the kingdom of Namhe, 18 years old, D+ rating, sword and shield, good stance, trained, young,
confident. He looked at Ivan and saw a skinny guy in a black hanbok, without a coat of arms, unarmed, with an outcast's spiral on his wrist. Rank undetermined, registered without a name. The knight smirked. An easy victory. The gong sounded. The knight attacked. Quickly. 18 veins were poured into the sword strike. Steel whistled. Ivan stood, unmoving. He ran the index finger of his right hand from left to right. 1/2 meter of thread. The sword shattered. The blade into 6 pieces. The hilt separate. Pieces of metal clattered across the stone of the arena. The knight stood with bare hand. 3 seconds ago, a sword had been in it. Now, a stump of a hilt. He looked at the pieces. He looked at Ivan. Ivan didn't move. The knight dropped his shield. He raised his hands. "I surrender!" The crowd was silent. Then it buzzed, quietly, confused. What had happened? No one had seen the blow. No one had seen the movement. The sword had simply shattered. The judge declared the nameless man the winner. Ivan returned to the bench. The second fight, the knight from Quran, 23 veins, C- rating, a spear with a fire rune, more serious. He'd seen the first fight, saw the sword shatter. He kept his distance. The spear was long, 3 meters. The rune glowed orange. He struck from afar. A thrust. Ivan stepped back. A thrust. Another step back. The knight advanced. Every strike with a rune. Waves of heat. The crowd roared in approval. This is a fight. That much is clear. Ivan retreated. The knight picked up speed. A series of 4 thrusts. Fast. Precise. 23 veins behind each one. The spear a streak of fire. On the 4th thrust, Ivan stopped. He raised his left hand, palm open, toward the spearhead. The spear entered his palm. No, the spear stopped a millimeter from his palm. A thread, invisible, a single thread across the tip. The tip struck it and froze. 23 veins pressed down. The thread held. The knight leaned his full weight against it. The spear did not move. Ivan clenched his palm. The thread passed through the shaft. The spear split into 2 halves. The rune went out. The knight stared at the stump in his hand. Ivan stepped forward. A single gesture. 3 threads. The knight's armor fell apart. Shoulder guards, breastplate, leg guards. 9 pieces of metal fell onto the stones. The knight stood in his underarmor, unarmed, unprotected. He dropped to one knee. The crowd exhaled. 23 veins. Knight rank. Disarmed and stripped in 4 seconds, without a single visible blow. Whispers rose from the stands. Who is this? Where from? What kind of power? No flash of G, no rune, no spell, just a gesture, and everything crumbles. Quarterfinals. Opponent. Commander from the Kingdom of Tibet. 26 veins. Index C. 2-handed sword. Heavy. No rune. Pure steel. Pure power. The commander didn't smirk. He had seen the 2 previous fights. He knew he wasn't facing an F rank. The gong. The commander didn't attack. He stood. He waited. The right tactic. If you don't know your enemy, don't strike first. Ivan was waiting too. 3 seconds. 5. 10. The crowd fell silent. 2 people stood in the arena, motionless. 20 seconds. The commander couldn't hold back. He stepped forward. The sword swung horizontally. A wide sweep. 26 lives. The air hummed with the blade's speed. Ivan crouched. The blade passed over his head. He straightened up and touched the flat side of the blade with his fingertip. A single stitch. Litoshov. The sword is sewn to the air. No, to the stone of the arena. A thread ran from the blade to the slab beneath his feet. The sword froze. The commander tugged. It didn't budge. He tugged with both hands. Not a millimeter. The sword had become part of the arena. The commander let go of the hilt. He lunged at Ivan with his fists. 26 veins in the blow. A fist the size of Ivan's head. Ivan ran 2 fingers along it. 2 meters of thread. The commander's gauntlets parted. The gloves parted. The fist flew bare. Ivan caught it with his palm. Chiton beneath the fabric took the blow. 26 veins against Chiton armor. The Chiton held. Ivan clenched the commander's fist with his own hand. The commander hissed. Chiton fingers pressed. Bones cracked. Ivan let go. The commander pulled his hand back. Broken fingers. Not all of them. 2. Enough to never clench a fist again. The commander dropped to one knee. The crowd roared. The stands shook. People leapt from their seats. On the balcony of the palace, Hogyong stood in full regalia, his father's crown on his head. Chancellor Yoon Gyung-ho beside him. Both were watching the arena. Hogyong hadn't recognized him yet. From a distance, the nameless man's face was hidden in the shadow cast by the sun. But the Chancellor squinted. He saw the spiral on the wrist, the exile spiral. He remembered that spiral. He remembered the lips that had whispered a promise 2 years ago. The Chancellor turned pale. The semifinals. The commander from the Kingdom of Hwaran, Princess So-yun's champion. 38 lives, B- rating. Hwaran's best fighter in the last 20 years. Dual blades, the double sickle technique. Fast, deadly. This is a serious opponent. The first of the day. The gong. The champion attacked immediately. Both blades at once. The left at the throat, the right at the thigh. Ivan dodged. The left blade passed a centimeter from his neck. The right grazed the fabric of his hanbok. The champion spun around. A counterattack. The right blade aimed for the back of the head. Ivan ducked. The wind from the blade ruffled his hair. Close. The champion wouldn't give him any distance. A flurry. 8 strikes in 3 seconds. Each precise. Each deadly. 38 veins. Ivan dodged. He didn't attack. He counted. Rhythm. Speed. Pattern. Left, right. Left, left, right. Right. A cycle of 6, repeating. After the 6th strike, a pause. A fraction of a second. Weight shifting from the right foot to the left. Ivan waited. The 6th strike. The right blade from above. Ivan stepped into the dead zone, between both hands. The champion didn't expect it. Ivan raised both hands, 10 fingers, 10 threads, together. The 2 blades shattered simultaneously, not into pieces, into dust. A cloud of metallic dust hung in the air. 10 threads passed through the steel at a frequency invisible to the eye. Each blade into 100 fragments, finer than sand. The champion stood empty-handed in a cloud of steel dust, a silvery mist, beautiful, terrifying. Ivan touched the champion's breastplate, 1 finger, 1 stitch. The breastplate split along the line of contact and slid off the body in 2 halves. Then the shoulder guards, then the greaves, touch after touch, stitch after stitch. The armor was stripped from the champion's body like a surgeon peeling away layers during an operation, layer by layer, carefully, without a single scratch on the skin. The champion stood in the arena in nothing but a shirt, barefoot. The armor lay in pieces around him, his weapons reduced to dust. 38 veins, and not a single one had helped. He did not move from his spot. He did not bow. He did not raise his hands. He looked at Ivan, his eyes wide. Not fear, something else. Realization. He understood that he stood before a power that could not be measured by veins. In the stands, Princess So-yuna of Hwaran rose from her seat. 52 veins. Commander. She had seen everything. She had seen how her champion, the kingdom's best fighter in 20 years, had been stripped down to his shirt without a single visible blow. She sat back down. She pulled a brush and a scroll from her sleeve. She wrote a single word. She closed the scroll. She tucked it into her sleeve. One word on the entire page. The final in an hour. Iwon sat on a bench. 137 veins. His consumption for the entire day. 11 meters. Trivial. He wasn't tired. He hadn't even broken a sweat. He looked at the palace balcony. Ho-gyong was standing there, the Chancellor beside him. They were conferring, their heads close together, lips moving. The Chancellor was speaking quickly. Ho-gyong shook his head. Then he nodded. The final. The last fight of the day. The final of the Nine Kingdoms tournament. The Chongwon Arena. 20,000 spectators. 9 royal balconies. The sun at its zenith. Iwon's opponent stood at the other end of the arena. Commander Kwon Tae-soo of the Songwon Royal House. 41 years old. Index B. Personal bodyguard to Crown Prince Chae Ho-gyong. Not a random finalist. Setup. Iwon saw the Chancellor whispering to the judges before the draw. He saw 2 fighters from another bracket suddenly withdraw due to illness. Kwon Tae-soo made it to the final not because he was the best, because Ho-gyong ordered it. The bodyguard must kill the nameless one. In the arena. Legally. In front of witnesses. Kwon Tae-soo was a big man, 6 feet tall, broad shoulders, full armor, heavy, runic, each plate engraved with a strengthening rune, a 2-handed sword, a blade 1.5 meters long, a rune of destruction on the blade, rank B with a single strike. He stood and looked at Iwon. There was neither fear nor respect in his eyes. An order is an order. He would kill this nameless one and receive gold from the crown prince. Gong. Kwon Tae-soo didn't wait. The sword flew up. The rune flashed red. A strike from above. Vertical. 41 veins plus the rune of destruction. The arena stone beneath Tae-soo's feet cracked under Gi's pressure. The air hummed. A B-rank strike. Yevon stepped to the left. The sword flew past. It slammed into the stone. The arena split open. A crack spread 5 meters from the point of impact. Dust flew up. The crowd gasped. Power. The true power of the commander with 41 veins. Tae-soo pulled his sword from the stone. A backswing, horizontal. Yevon stepped back. The blade passed in front of his chest. Tae-soo stepped forward. Another strike, diagonal. Yevon dodged. Another. Tae-soo pressed forward. Every strike split the stone. The arena was covered in cracks. Dust rose in a column. Yevon dodged. He didn't attack. He counted. No rhythm, no pattern. Tae-soo didn't repeat himself. A good fighter, experienced. Yevon was counting something else. He was counting the armor plates. 24. Each with a rune, each rune a separate contour. 24 reinforcement contours. The armor's overall strength was equivalent to rank A-, stronger than that of the Hwaran champion, significantly stronger. The Chancellor had made sure of it. He wanted to ensure that the nameless one couldn't strip Tae-soo of his armor like the others before him. Iwon realized this after the 3rd blow. The runes on the armor don't just provide reinforcement, they're linked in a network. 24 runes work as one. Breaking one plate means activating the remaining 23. The defense will strengthen. A standard tactic of the Alchemist's Tower. The Chancellor received this armor from the tower. Fact. Iwon stopped dodging. He stood still. Tae-soo swung. A blow to the head. Iwon raised his right hand, open palm, toward the blade. A thread emerged from all 10 fingers, not half a meter, not a meter, 20 meters, all at once. The crowd saw it for the first time. The threads glinted in the sun, thin as light, silvery. For a split second, the whole world saw a web of 10 threads radiating from Ivan's fingers. 20 meters of thread wrapped around Quan Tae-su. Sword, arms, legs, his torso, his helmet. In an instant, Tae-su found himself in a cocoon. The threads didn't cut. They didn't squeeze. They held. The sword froze in midair. His hands froze. His legs were rooted to the spot. 41 veins throbbed outward. The threads held.
Tae-su growled. Gi flared across his entire body. 24 runes ignited simultaneously. His armor glowed red. Maximum power. B rank at its limit. The threads stretched tight. They trembled, but they didn't snap. Ivan stood with his arm outstretched. His face was calm. He calculated. 20 meters of thread were holding a B-rank fighter at full power. 30% margin of safety. Enough. He clenched his fist. The threads tightened. The 24 runic plates of the armor split apart. Not at the seams, at the runes. Each rune was severed by a thread. The circuit was broken. 24 circuits at once. The network collapsed. The armor lost its reinforcement. It became ordinary metal. And then the threads finished the job. Each plate was separated from his body. Every strap was cut. Every clasp was torn open. The armor fell from Tae-su like leaves from a tree. 24 plates. 24 pieces of dead metal. A clang against stone. Tae-su stood, without armor, without a rune. The sword in his hands was intact but useless. The threads still held him. He could not move. Ivan unclenched his fist. The threads let go. Tae-su fell to his knees. The sword slipped from his hands. It clattered against the stone. Silence. 20,000 people. Silence. Then, a single voice from the podium. Quiet. A woman's. Princess Soyuna. She uttered a single word. Weaver. Quietly. But the arena was silent, and the word rang out like the toll of a bell. Weaver. The people didn't know what it meant, but it sounded so chilling it sent shivers down their spines. Ho-kyung stood on the balcony. He saw the face of the nameless one. The sun shifted and the shadow faded. A face. Young. Thin. Familiar. Eyes. Those very eyes that had looked at him from the floor of the throne room 2 years ago. Ho-kyung recognized him. He turned pale, then green. He grabbed the balcony railing. His mouth opened, closed, opened. He uttered a name, quietly, with just his lips. Yevon. Chancellor Yoon Kyung-ho stood motionless nearby. He had recognized him earlier. He had known since the semifinals, from the moment he saw the spiral. But now Ho-kyung knew too. And in the Chancellor's eyes flashed what Yevon had seen 2 years ago in the throne room. Not relief, fear. Third Moon Ji-hak sat in the judge's box, jade prayer beads in his hands. He saw the threads. He was the only one among 20,000 who understood what they were. The beads slipped from his fingers and fell to the floor of the box. A dull thud. The elder whispered to his assistant, "Measure his vein." The assistant held up the crystal. He looked. He paled. He held it up again. He paled even more. The elder whispered again, "Measure it again, one more time." The crystal showed a single vein. One. Unbroken. Unbroken. 140 meters. The old man closed his eyes. He remembered. 300 years ago, the same readings, the same single vein. In the woman they killed. In the race they exterminated. They buried her, burned the records, erased the word. 300 years. And here he stands in the arena,
19 years old, in a black hanbok with threads on his fingers. The judge declared the nameless fighter the winner. His voice trembled. 20,000 people were screaming, not all out of delight, some out of horror. Iwon stood in the center of the arena. He did not bow. He did not raise his hand. He looked at the balcony, at Hojian, brother to brother, 100 meters away, 2 years from now. Iwon smiled, subtly, like a cut.
40 days after the tournament, the 241st day, Hojian waited no longer. He betrayed his father, a nighttime coup, quiet, swift. 3 of the Chancellor's commanders entered King Choi Mingwan's chambers. They bound him, gagged him, carried him to the palace's underground dungeon. In the morning, Hojian took the throne, his father's crown upon his head, the Chancellor at his right hand, the third elder at his left, 3 powers in a single throne room, the palace, the tower, the shadow. Hojian announced that the king was ill, seriously ill. The regency passes to the crown prince for the duration of the illness. The dignitaries nodded, those very ones. No one asked a single question. The regent's first decree, the execution of the former Prince Choi Iwon, the demonic sorcerer, the weaver of flesh and stone, open, public, in Cheongwan Square, in 3 days. The second decree, the execution of former King Choi Myung-gwan for concealing the demonic heir, along with his son, on the same scaffold. The Chancellor signed both decrees. The elder affixed the tower's seal, legally, formally, impeccably. Hojian sent an army north, 3,000 soldiers, 3 commanders, a mid-level C-rank unit. Their mission? To breach the walls of Baekseon and bring back Iwon in chains, or his head. Hojian would have personally led the campaign, but the Chancellor forbade it. Too risky. The Weaver is unpredictable. Hojian remained in the capital. He was preparing the scaffold. A platform was being built in Cheongwan Square, the very same stone on which Iwon had stood 40 days ago. Now there would be a chopping block on it. Iwon learned everything through Hansol. The dragon had seen the army from above, 3,000 dots moving north, 3 large dots in front, commanders. Hansol transmitted the image. Yevon stood on the wall of Baekseon. His life force was at 180. In the 40 days since the tournament, he hadn't stopped. New chimeras, new stitches, new blackouts, new records. His body was rebuilding itself with every overexertion. His strength grew like an avalanche, every day faster than the last. 180 meters, index A+. Hojian's army was on its way here, a 3-day march. But his father's execution was in 3 days. The math didn't add up. If Iwon stayed to defend Baekseon, the army would arrive and there would be a battle. He will win. 3 commanders and 3,000 soldiers against Hansol Baekwa and 14 chimeras. Victory is guaranteed. But while he is winning here, Hojian will be beheading their father in Cheongwan Square. Iwon closed his eyes. He calculated. The distance to the capital is 1,000 kilometers. Hansol covers 500 kilometers a night at top speed. 2 flights, night. A stop, night. Arrival at dawn on the 3rd day. On the day of the execution, right on the dot, not an hour to spare. If there's a blizzard, if there's wind, if Hansol gets tired, father will die. Iwon opened his eyes. He turned to Mujan. The general stood nearby, waiting. Iwon said he was leaving Baekseon to Mujian, Baekwa. 6 chimera generals, 20 fighters, against an army of 3,000. Mujan didn't blink. He asked only one thing, when? Iwon replied, now. Mujan nodded. He turned to No Chin Ho, began giving orders, positions, deployment, chimeras on the flanks, Baekwa in the center, archers on the walls, underground passages for retreat. The general worked like a machine, like clockwork.
5 years in the rift hadn't broken him. They had merely confined him. Yevon mounted Hansol's back. With him were 6 B+ rank Chimera generals, the latest version, the best. Each weighed a third less than the first ones. Each was twice as strong. Hansol could carry 7. The dragon flapped its wings. Pecksong descended. Walls, towers, tiny figures on the walls, Mugen on the platform. He didn't wave. He wasn't seeing them off. He stood straight. His right hand, with the scorpion claw, was clenched into a fist. Iwon flew south. Night, stars, wind, 40 degrees below zero at altitude. The chitin armor held up. Hansol flew steadily, powerfully. His wings cut through the air. The left wing, that one, the stitched one, it worked perfectly. Not a single glitch in 200 days. The suture of Surgeon So Doyon. Dawn, a stop, a mountain pass in the no man's land between the rift and the kingdoms. Hansol sat down on a rock. Rest. 6 hours. Iwon hadn't slept. He sat on the rock and looked south, where somewhere over there, beyond the horizon, his father is being led into an underground chamber. His hands are bound. A sack is placed over his head. Hojion's guards.
The very same soldiers who served his father, now they serve his son. Iwon clenched the jade shard. 240 days ago, Hojion said that his father now had 2 sons. Today, he will learn that he was wrong. The second night. Hansol is in the air again. Faster. The dragon sensed the tension. The thread of loyalty pulsed. Hansol knew where and why. He was carrying the weaver home. Dawn of the 242nd day, the capital of Songwon. Yewon saw it from above. Walls, towers, roof tiles, smoke from chimneys. Cheongwon Square. There, in the center, the scaffold, a platform made of fresh wood. On the platform, a block. Next to it, an executioner in black. The people herded in to watch. Thousands of faces. The front row, dignitaries, those very ones. On the balcony, Hogyong, wearing his father's crown. The Chancellor on the right, the third elder on the left. The Chancellor's 3 commanders behind him, guards along the perimeter. And on the scaffold, bound, a sack over his head, on his knees, his father, King Choi Myung-gwan. Hogyong raised his hand. The executioner raised his sword. The sky darkened, not from a cloud. Hansol, 40 meters of white scales blocked out the sun. A shadow fell over the square, over the scaffold, over the executioner. The sword froze in midair. The executioner raised his head. A dragon. An icy roar split the morning silence. Windows in the houses shattered. Horses in their stalls reared up. Children began to cry. The crowd screamed. Iwon stepped onto the square. A black hanbok without a crest. Heaton armor beneath the fabric. A spiral on his wrist. Behind him, 6 chimera generals. 6 creatures that do not exist in nature. They marched in formation, 4 legs each. The chitin gleamed in the morning light. People ran. To the sides, into the alleys, pushing each other. The dignitaries in the front row sank into their chairs. They didn't run. Their legs wouldn't obey them. Hojion's bodyguard commander, the new one, not Quan Tae-su. Tae-su never recovered after the tournament. The new commander, 39 years old. He drew his sword. He rushed toward Iwon, a professional reflex, to protect his principal. Iwon ran a finger through his hair. He didn't even look in his direction. The sword shattered into 12 pieces, the armor into 30. Iwon didn't count anymore. The threads worked on their own, like a surgeon's fingers that remember every stitch, muscle memory. The commander stood naked from the waist down, without weapons, without armor, without understanding what had happened. He collapsed to his knees, not from pain, from shock. Iwon walked toward the scaffold, guards, 20 men with swords. Not a single one moved. Dahi. She had flown in separately, on a pigeon. No, not on a pigeon. She had arrived 2 days earlier, by land, through bribed smugglers. 2 nights in the capital. 2 nights she worked. The armorers who supply the palace guard, the ones who take gold from anyone who pays. Dahi paid, not with gold, with information. She told the armorers who had killed their guildmaster 3 years ago, the Chancellor, for refusing to forge illegal weapons for the cleaners. The armorers let Dahi near the guard's armor. 1 night, 1 thin thread in each piece of armor. Iwon's thread. He'd left Dahi a spool before taking off. The threads didn't control the guards, they controlled the metal. The guards couldn't raise their weapons. The swords would not come out of their sheaths. The hands in the armored gauntlets would not bend. 20 men in armor that had become prisons. Iwon climbed onto the scaffold. 3 steps. The executioner stood with a sword. Iwon looked at him. The executioner dropped the sword, turned around, left. Iwon approached his father. He knelt down. He removed the sack from his head. The face of King Choi Iwon, old, gaunt. His eyes squinted against the light. His beard was unshaven. His lips were chapped. He hadn't eaten for 3 days. Iwon cut the ropes, not with a knife, with his finger. The thread passed through the rope. The king's hands fell limply. His father looked at his son, at the face he had banished 2 years ago, at the exile spiral he had allowed to be branded, at the eyes that did not cry then and do not cry now. The king opened his mouth, closed it, opened it. He couldn't find the words. Iwon helped him to his feet, turned him to face the square, then turned himself toward the balcony. Ho-young stood on the balcony and looked at his younger brother. 2 years ago, he had stood by the throne and looked down at the boy with 2 veins. Now the boy stood on the scaffold and looked up, and Ho-young understood the difference. Back then, Iwon had been on his knees. Now, Ho-young wanted to stand on his own 2 feet, but his legs wouldn't bend. Chancellor Yoon Kyung-ho stepped back from the railing. 1 step back, 2, 3. He moved toward the door, quietly, unnoticed. Iwon noticed. He ran his left pinky finger along it. 1/2 meter of thread. The balcony door slammed shut. The hinges had fused together. The thread had pierced through metal and stone. The door had become part of the wall. The Chancellor stood before a door that had ceased to be a door. A wall. Smooth. Without a crack. He turned around. His face was gray. The Chancellor's 3 commanders stepped forward, simultaneously. Professionals. 32, 35, 29 lives, 3 blades, 3 sets of armor, ranks from C+ to B-. Together, they posed a B- level threat, seriously, to anyone else. Iwon raised his right hand, spread his fingers. 5 threads shot out simultaneously. First commander, 35 veins. A thread ran through his sword from hilt to tip. The sword split in 2 lengthwise. The left half fell to the left, the right half to the right, evenly. The second thread passed through the armor, not at the seams, through the center of the breastplate, through the center of the shoulder guards, through the center of the greaves. Every piece split in 2. The armor crumbled. The third thread. The second commander. 32 veins. He didn't have time to swing. The thread wrapped around his sword and sewed it to the scabbard. The sword wouldn't come out. He tugged. It wouldn't budge. He tugged with both hands. The hilt snapped off. The blade remained in the scabbard. It had grown into it. It became a single piece of metal. The fourth thread. The same commander. Armor, straps, buckles, all at once. The clang of metal against stone. The fifth thread. The third commander. 29 strands. The youngest. He dropped the sword himself. Without waiting, raised his hands. Smart. Iwon lowered his hand. 5 threads. 2.5 meters of sinew. 3 commanders disarmed and stripped in the time it takes to blink twice. In the square,
The silence became palpable. It pressed against their ears. 20,000 people held their breath. The elder Munji Hak stood on the balcony next to the Chancellor. He held no jade rosary in his hands. He had dropped it at the tournament and hadn't picked it up. Superstition. His hands trembled.
He saw the threads. He was the only one on that balcony who understood what was happening. He understood that he stood before a power his predecessors had been trying to kill for 300 years, and which they had not killed completely. Iwon jumped down from the scaffold. The chimeras parted. He walked toward the palace, across the square, over the stones upon which 20,000 people stood. People parted. They fell to their knees, not because he ordered them to, because they couldn't stand. Their legs wouldn't hold them. 6 generals followed him. Hansol hung in the sky, a white shadow, cold, enormous. Iwon entered the palace, through the main gates. The gates were closed. He touched the gate, Litoshov in reverse. A splitting, the gate swung apart. A thick oak, 4 fingers thick, split along the grain. He passed through the gate as if through a curtain. The palace corridors, the very same ones. 32 steps from the gate to the turn, 18 from the turn to the stairs, he counted. Just like then. Just like 242 days ago when they dragged him outside. The same torches, the same stone, the same path, in reverse. The stairs leading up, the balcony. Hojan stood by the railing. Behind him, the Chancellor, the Elder, 3 naked commanders, all trapped. The door was sealed shut. The balcony was 20 meters high. To jump meant to die. To stay meant to face what was coming. Iwon stepped out onto the balcony. Hojan stepped back, his back pressed against the railing. There was nowhere else to go. He looked at his younger brother. The commander's 47 veins glowed on his neck, a pale web. Once it had seemed proof of superiority. Now it seemed like nothing. Hojan screamed. He called for the guards. The guards below stood in armor that wouldn't obey them. Their arms wouldn't rise. Their swords wouldn't be drawn. Iwon's threads held the metal fast. The guards heard the scream. The guards could not respond. Iwon approached his brother, close, within arm's reach, just as Hojan had approached him 2 years ago. He leaned toward his ear. Iwon spoke softly. I promised. Remember. He didn't kill Hojan. He was cutting him open, methodically, like a surgeon peeling away layers. Clothes. The thread ran through the fabric, and every seam of the royal hanbok came apart. The silk slid off his body. The sash, unripped. The boots, unripped. The undergarments, unripped. Hogyang stood naked on the balcony before 20,000 people, the very same people before whom 2 years ago the guards had torn the hanbok from Iwon. The rings. The thread passed through the metal. The rings fell apart. The stones fell out. The crown. The thread wrapped around the band. The crown split into 4 pieces. Gold clinked against stone. Hogyang stood naked and stripped of everything on the balcony of his own palace. Iwon raised his hand. Index finger. A single thread. Thin. He touched Hogyang's wrist. The thread entered the skin. Not deep. Superficially. It traced a circle. A spiral. That very one. The mark of an outcast. But not with fire. With a thread. The pain was pure. Precise. Surgical. Hogyang screamed. For the first time in 2 years, Iwon heard his scream. High-pitched, thin, ugly. The spiral settled on Hogyang's wrist. Perfect. A mirror image of the one that burned on Iwon's wrist. Iwon stepped back. He looked at his brother, naked, on his knees. The spiral on his wrist. The crowd below on their knees. Elder Munji Hak on his knees. Chancellor Yoon Kyung-ho on his knees. 3 naked commanders on their knees. Iwon spoke in a voice as steady as it had been 2 years ago. The Northern Ice Rift. 1 week. Consider it a gift. Hogyang looked at the spiral, at his brother, at the crowd. Tears streamed down his cheeks. Not from pain, from something worse than pain, understanding. He understood what Ivan had felt 2 years ago, every second. Ivan turned to the Chancellor. Yoon Kyung-ho was on his knees, old, gray-haired. His hands were shaking. Ivan said he knew. So Yanhua, poison, the order. The Chancellor didn't look up. Ivan said his time would come. Not today, but it would come. Let him count the days. He turned to the elder, Moon Ji-hak, the third of the 9, the one who gave the order to kill his mother, the one who, 300 years ago, helped exterminate the weavers. Ivan said one phrase, 312. That's how many names are on the list. The elder shuddered. He understood. The boy knows everything. Ivan turned toward the door. He touched the wall. Litoshov. The door became a door again. He walked out. He went down the stairs. 32 steps. 18. He stepped out onto the square. His father was standing by the scaffold. Alive. Free. He was looking at his son, at the boy he had banished, at the man who had returned. King Cham Yong-gwan knelt before Ivan, not as a subject, as a father, who realized that he had always had only one son, and it was not Ho-gyong. Ivan reached out his hand. He helped his father to his feet. They stood in Chungwon Square, the sun, silence, 20,000 people, Hansol in the sky, 6 generals behind him, a spiral on his wrist. Ivan raised his hand to address the crowd, and at that moment, the earth shook. Not like an earthquake, deeper, heavier. The sound came from the north, a low rumble, as if the earth itself were groaning. Ivan froze, his hand in the air. He felt it with every fiber of his being, 180 meters from head to toe. Something had awakened. Far away, on the horizon, where the sky meets the earth, where the great rift cuts through the continent. 300 miles from here, there. The sky split open. Not the clouds, the sky itself. A black line ran upward from the horizon. The great rift was widening. Ivan saw it through the vein, a rift 300 years old, a wound in the body of the continent. A wound inflicted by the 9 elders when they killed the last weaver. It had bled magic for 3 centuries, and now it had opened wider. Something was rising from it. On the horizon, slowly, black, huge, a tower. A tower of black bone. It grew from the crack like a tooth from the gum, rising above the clouds. Black ribs, black walls, black spires. Bone, not stone. The bone of a creature older than the continent. 20,000 people saw it. The tower on the horizon, black against the gray sky. It grew and stopped when the top spire pierced the clouds. Hansol hissed. For the first time in Ivan's memory, the dragon did not growl, did not roar, hissed. The sound of fear. An ancient fear. A fear older than memory. Hansol transmitted the words directly into Ivan's mind. Not an image. Words. Clear. Cold. Brother, it has awakened because you have returned. Ivan stared at the tower. A vein trembled inside his body. All of it. 180 meters, like a string. It resonated with something inside that tower, as if there were another vein there. Older, longer, more powerful. The first weaver, the sarcophagus, the map of the roof. It all came together. What the 9 elders had buried beneath the crack 300 years ago.
It wasn't dead. It had been sleeping. A figure appeared at the very top of the tower, far away, 300 li perhaps, but Iwon saw it. The vein saw it. A white hanbok, a female figure, hair black down to her waist, a face. Iwon looked at that face across 300 li, across 300 years, across death and rebirth and lies and betrayal. His mother's face. So Yan Hua. She opened her eyes. Iwon stood in Chongguan Square, his hand in the air, the crowd on their knees, his father beside him, Ho Gyong naked on the balcony, the Chancellor on his knees, the old man on his knees. Victory, complete, absolute. And on the horizon, a tower of black bone in which his dead mother stands with her eyes open. Iwon lowered his hand. He looked at the spiral on his wrist, then at the horizon. He whispered, "Mom." Hansol in the sky turned north. Golden eyes reflected the black tower. The north wind carried a scent. Sweet, heavy, ozone and decay. The underworld, but stronger, 1,000 times stronger. The elder Munji Hak rose from his knees. He looked at the horizon. His face turned white, whiter than snow. He whispered, 300 years. We thought we had buried it. We were wrong. Iwon turned to face him, looked him in the eyes. The old man saw in those eyes not hatred, not vengeance, something worse. Patience. Iwon spoke a single sentence. I will sew back together what you have torn apart. Everything. And what has awakened? That too. He walked toward Hansol. The dragon descended onto the square. The 6 generals took their places on its back. Iwon sat down. He looked up at the sky, at the black tower, at the white figure atop it. Hansol flapped his wings. Cheongwon Square remained below. 20,000 faces, facing north, toward the tower of black bone, toward what had awakened. Iwon flew toward it. Day 242. Life Force 180. Index A+. 14 combat level allies. Peksong Fortress stands. Father is alive. Ho Gyong is on his knees. The arch is closed, and a new arch has opened its maw on the horizon. A tower of bones, the face of a mother, and a question with no answer. What the 9 elders buried beneath the great rift, and what will happen when Iwon tries to sew the world back together.